Good day, everyone. Welcome to your second year in UERM. I'm Dr. Kalimag, and this lecture is about writing the introduction part of the research paper. These are the objectives of the session. By the end of the session, the learner should be able to formulate research objectives, variables, hypotheses, significance of the research, and scope and limitations. The introduction is the first part of the research paper or original article in the IMRAD format. So this is the format in which journals typically publish their articles. So we have introduction, materials and methods, results, and discussion. Notice there's no review of related literature here. Instead, we have a short background in the introduction. And other related literature are discussed in the discussion part. But this is for the completed research. So this sem, you are just going to make your research proposal. These are the basic parts of your research proposal. It also starts with the introduction, followed by the review of related literature, followed by the research methodology, presentation and analysis of data, timetable, and budgetary requirements. This is what we'll be following this semester for your research proposal. So what is the purpose of the introduction? It's in the name, of course, so it's to introduce a specific topic and give background information so that the reader can kind of get on the same baseline level of knowledge as the author, and so they can understand the rest of the paper. But importantly, it also sets the initial impression, which motivates the reader hopefully to finish the article. These are the parts of the introduction. Note that there is usually a background of the study at the start of the introduction, but since you are going to write a separate section for the review of related literature, that's why there's no background here. So we have statement of the problem, objectives, hypothesis, theoretical or conceptual framework, significance, scope and limitations, and definition of terms. So we will discuss each of these one by one. For the statement of the problem, Dr. Wanko already discussed this. Just as a review for the research question, you have to present the PCOM, which stands for the population to be studied, the intervention or the exposure, the comparison or the control, the outcome, and the methodology. For the objectives, so objectives are what the researcher hopes to achieve or the outcomes he or she is hoping to be produced in a study, or it's the solution to the research problem. Objectives are really crucial for a study. They're like the crux, I would say, of the study. They indicate the relevant variables. They guide the research in the choice of research design or methods. They tell you what data to collect. They are useful in planning the analysis of results and are the basis for interpreting the results. So you might be familiar already with the SMART objectives. So in the same way that your research problem should be SMART, the way that you state your objectives should also be SMART. Specific means you focus on what the study is trying to solve, identify the dependent and independent variables, instruments to measure the variables. For measurable, use action words which are specific enough to be measured. Use operational terms, specifying exactly what the researcher wishes to do. For achievable, it should be feasible or realistic with the resources and time that you have. For relevant, so what will be the impact of the study results? What new knowledge will your research generate? Are there any real-world problems that it will solve? Okay, but you don't actually write the relevance in the objectives, but it just shows na your research problem and your accompanying objectives should be relevant. Then for time bound, you can state the time frame or endpoint of the study. For example, the study period like school year 2024 to 2025, or specific months of implementation like April to August 2025. So for objectives, we have one general objective followed by a few specific objectives. The general objective states what is expected to be achieved or the outcomes of the research in overall terms. It is the solution to the research problem and is derived from the research problem and the hypothesis. So don't worry about sounding repetitive. It's okay if the general objective just mirrors your research question, title, and hypothesis. For the specific objectives, these systematically address the various parts of the research problem, and they specify everything that you need to do to answer the general objective. So specific objectives break down a general objective into smaller, logically connected parts. For example, if your general objective is to determine if Sambong can decrease serum cholesterol in middle-aged Filipinos versus simvastatin, a correct specific objective could be to determine LDL levels. So you're specifying what cholesterol level you specified LDL level of middle-aged Filipinos after giving Sambong versus simvastatin. You specified the time period for 6 weeks. An incorrect specific objective would be something that's not quite related to the general objective, which is to determine the blood pressure of middle-aged Filipinos after giving Sambong for 6 weeks. So you might measure the blood pressure during the study, but that should not be the specific objective because your general objective is about serum cholesterol. Your objectives must show your desired outcomes, the populations under study, the independent variables, such as the groups being compared or the levels of intervention used, and the conditions of your study. So basically, you try to incorporate your PCOM into your objectives. Another example, so back to Sambong. To determine if Sambong is more effective in decreasing serum cholesterol in middle-aged Filipinos versus simvastatin. So you want to have logical sequenced specific objectives. So your specific objective one is to determine the baseline lipid profile of middle-aged Filipinos. Then your specific objective two is to determine the lipid profile of middle-aged Filipinos after being given Sambong versus simvastatin for 6 weeks. And specific objective 3 could be the statistical analysis. So determine if there is a statistically significant difference in the lipid profile between middle-aged Filipinos given Sambong versus simvastatin for 6 weeks. When stating your objectives, you use action words depending on whether your research is qualitative or quantitative. Qualitative studies answer the why question. They observe and interpret, and they group common data without using statistical analysis. You are actually not allowed to do qualitative studies in this course, so we'll stick to quantitative studies. Quantitative studies answer how many or how much. The data gathered are numerical, and you do statistical analysis. So even on topics, for example, on quality of life or opinions of people, for example, opinions of people regarding vaccines in the community, you might think it should be a qualitative study. But if you use a questionnaire which generates numbers, averages, frequencies, etc., then that still counts as a quantitative study. So when you have quantitative studies, your verbs in your objectives should be to determine, to compare, to calculate, to test, to evaluate. For qualitative studies, in contrast, you can use words like to describe, to explore, to understand, to discover, to develop, and to generate. This is another example of a general objective and specific objectives in a cross-sectional study. The population is children in Metro Manila. The exposure is leptospirosis, and the outcome is the magnitude. So the general objective here is to determine the magnitude of leptospirosis and its risk factors among children in Metro Manila. And the specific objectives are to determine the prevalence of leptospirosis and to determine the prevalence of selected risk factors. So basically, the specific objectives just answer or specify what you need to do to accomplish the general objective. Okay, let's move on to defining the variables in your study. Okay, these are the types of variables. We have the independent variable or the manipulated variable, the dependent or response variable, the confounding variables, and the background variable. So confounding variables distort the results of your study, while background variables, an example would be the demographic characteristics of the study subjects. So the independent variables are the variables that cause the change in the dependent variable. They are the input or the stimulus. They cause the variation in the event of interest and is what is being manipulated by the researcher. There can be more than one independent variable. For the dependent variables, this is the outcome or effect of the independent variable. For confounding variables, these can also be called as extraneous variables. These are variables not included in the research or not held constant, but would have a probable impact on the outcome of the research. It is any variable other than the independent variable that would cause a change in the dependent variable. Okay, let's move on to the hypothesis. A research hypothesis is a conjectural statement of the relationship between two or more variables. These are the researcher's prediction of the research findings. It organizes the efforts of the research, identifies what variables are involved, and enables researchers to understand the problem and provides a framework. They are the working instruments of theory. So before you have a theory, you must first form a hypothesis and support it with evidence. Hypothesis should be tested empirically. Again, a hypothesis is a prediction of a relationship between one or more factors and the problem under study, which can be tested. So we first have the null hypothesis, in which there is no real difference between the means, the averages, or the proportions of the groups being compared, or that there is no real association between the dependent and independent variables. Whereas the alternative hypothesis states that there is a real difference or that there is an association between groups. When stating your hypothesis, you should state the null hypothesis first, followed by the alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis can either be unidirectional, which is also called one-sided or directional, and it can be bidirectional, which is also called two-sided and non-directional. We'll discuss that again in a bit. So again, the null hypothesis states that there is no relationship or difference between variables or groups. For example, the grades of first-year biology students who learn online this semester are no different from those who learn in the classroom. So same lang. For the alternative hypothesis, for unidirectional, the unidirectional hypothesis states the direction of the relationship or the difference between variables or groups. So it states which is higher or which is lower, or if there is a positive or a negative relationship or association between variables. So for example, biology students who learn online this semester have higher grades than those who learn in the classroom. For bidirectional hypothesis, these states that these state only that there is a difference between variables or groups, but does not say which is greater or smaller. Or it states that there is an association between variables but does not say in which direction. So for example, there is a significant difference in grades between biology students who learn online versus those who learn in the classroom this semester. So it just states there is significant difference, but didn't specify which is higher or which is lower. So given this example, is this alternative hypothesis unidirectional or bidirectional? Okay, there is a significant difference between the mean HbA1c of those taking dapagliflozin versus sitagliptin for 3 months. Is that unidirectional or bidirectional? So this is bidirectional. Then how would you make that into a unidirectional hypothesis? So you can state that as, for example, the mean HbA1c of those taking dapagliflozin for 3 months is significantly less than the mean HbA1c of those taking sitagliptin for 3 months. So that's unidirectional. When do you use a bidirectional hypothesis and when do you use a unidirectional hypothesis? So it depends on the previous literature, the related literature that you should have done. So if you have a reason to suppose that one is better or one will have a certain effect, greater effect than another, based on the related literature, then you can have unidirectional. But if there is unclear evidence and you don't know which would probably be more effective, then you can go for a bidirectional hypothesis. Guidelines in writing hypothesis. So in experimental studies, hypotheses are explicit. You need to really state them. However, in descriptive or historical studies, hypotheses may not necessarily be explicitly stated. So pwedeng walang hypothesis nakalagay. Hypotheses are stated in the null form and are formulated from the research question. So again, yung hypothesis also mirrors halos same yung wording niyan from the research question. Avoid value judgment. So avoid words which imply judgment like better than or ought to be or should be or poor. For example, medication A is superior to placebo in reducing dizziness. So instead of saying superior, you can specify it to subjects given medication A have less incidence of dizziness compared to placebo. So you actually qualified the word superior. You made it more measurable in terms of the incidence of dizziness. The second example, non-cognitive evaluation is inferior to cognitive evaluation in predicting board exam performance of medical students. Instead of saying inferior, you can say, for example, non-cognitive evaluation has less positive predictive value in predicting board exam performance as compared to cognitive evaluation. And for the third example, instead of saying online classes are better than face-to-face, you can make it measurable by saying, for example, there are higher skill scores among those taking online classes compared to face-to-face classes. Moving on to the theoretical or conceptual framework. What is a theoretical framework? Okay, before that, what is a theory? A theory is a well-substantiated explanation of phenomena on an observable fact or event. So in a theoretical framework, you explain the theories and assumptions used in a research and provides context for the research. You basically summarize what are the theories that you have studied that may impact your study. So this is based on a review of related literature. It's not just based on the opinions of the author. Theoretical framework is sometimes used interchangeably with a conceptual framework, but in many references, they are not exactly the same. So this is an example of a theoretical framework showing the theories and assumptions of this study on what impacts the behavior of health professionals. So you can see that beliefs about capabilities, intention, and habit or past behavior affect the present behavior of health professionals. And five things affect the intention. You can see the cause and effect relationship with the direction of the arrows. This is another example of a theoretical framework showing health systems. It shows the relationship of each concept or part with the other parts using the arrows. Para din siyang Venn diagram kind of. A conceptual framework is a bit different from a theoretical framework. It's a diagram showing the relationship between the variables being studied and the factors affecting them, including but not limited to exposure, outcome, and confounding variables. It also shows cause and effect relationships. And whether you are writing a theoretical or conceptual framework, you should write also a short explanation and cite the references if you have based your framework on another author's work. So it shouldn't just be the diagram. You should have a written explanation of it. This is a guide on how to make a conceptual framework. It shows the relationships between your variables that you identified. Remember the independent variable affecting the dependent variable, and you have these confounding variables that can affect the dependent variable. If applicable, you can add moderating variable, mediating variable, and control variable. But yung pinaka-important lang is the independent, dependent, and confounding variables. Okay, so this is the example of the conceptual framework. So the independent variable here in the study is social media usage affecting academic performance. And then they noted confounding variables such as socioeconomic status, prior academic achievement. Mediating variable here is study habits. So social media usage directly affects study habits, which then affects the academic performance. Self-discipline here is considered a moderating variable, but for simplicity, you can also just label it as a confounding variable. So let's move on to the significance of the research. Who has an interest in the domain of inquiry? So you can state that to whom will this study matter, to whom will the results of this study matter? Are there any specific populations or sectors of society who may be interested in the results? So what do we already know about the topic? What has not been answered adequately in previous research and practice? And how will this research add to knowledge, practice, and policy in this area? Can it be used to inform future health programs? For the scope and limitations, so first review your research problem and objectives, that is the scope or coverage of your study. And then identify what are the possible biases and confounders. How will you minimize these? What are the possible consequences of these biases and confounders? How would they affect your results? What variables or factors are not covered by your research? Okay, so you can state all of that. It's better to be honest and forthright about your limitations, so it makes you more trustworthy to the reader. Okay, for definition of terms, we have nominal or conceptual definition, which is the definition found in dictionaries. You can use that for terms that some readers may not understand or are not familiar with, but this is optional only. Even the operational definition is optional if there are just some terms that you need to explain how you use them in your research. So we have measured operational definition, which describes how a variable is to be measured. For example, when you use the word hunger or a participant was hungry, you use the score, a certain cutoff score from a questionnaire developed to measure hunger. For example, 1 to 10 yung score, and then 5 or more is considered as hungry. So that would be your operational definition for hunger or hungry. And an experimental operational definition is how an investigation manipulates a variable. For example, in preventing the subject from consuming anything for X number of hours. So you are making the subject hungry by making them not consume anything for a specific number of hours. And that's how you defined how you made them hungry. Okay. So again, the operational definition of a variable is the definition of a variable in terms of the actual procedures used by the researcher to measure or manipulate it. And a good operational definition defines procedures so precisely that other researchers can replicate the study. So that's always the goal of writing your research paper, that other researchers can replicate the study using the details that you have put into your paper. Okay, a guide to writing the introduction. It should be concise, avoid long reviews about the topic. So this is when we have a background included in the introduction. However, in your research proposal, you have a separate review of related literature. So just keep this in mind when you write the final paper in the IMRAD format. So the introduction should be succinct and focused. So please avoid adding flowery words or mga pampahaba or fillers in your paper. We don't want long papers. We need proposals that are clear and that defines and explains everything that needs to be explained for it to be replicable, and you need to have a good, well, sa RRL next lecture nyo na yun i-discuss how to go about writing the RRL. But this actually applies to that as well. Suggested approaches are cone or funnel, in which you write the main points, existing knowledge gap, and then the main question or hypothesis, followed by a brief overview of how you will approach the study. And you can also write it in 3 main paragraphs, stating what is known, what is not known, and the objectives and how it will add to scientific knowledge. Again, this is when you have a background of the study included in your introduction, but that does not apply to your research proposal since you have an RRL. This is a way for you to critique your research questions, objectives, and hypotheses, so you can check your own work. Is the research problem easy to identify? Is there a statement of significance of the study? Is there a good fit between the research question and how it is being investigated? Does the research question have clear objectives, questions, or hypotheses? Are key concepts identified? Are verbs used appropriately? Are hypotheses properly worded? Do they state a predicted relationship between two or more variables? Okay. And common mistakes or errors in writing the introduction is a long and rambling introduction. So be concise. Extensive listing of references. Again, this pertains more to your RRL or your background of the study. So don't just list your references. It should all be parang processed now or summarized. Extensive critique of others' work. So the introduction is not the place for you to write an extensive critique of another research. You should avoid missing writing about important previous work. So yung mga landmark studies, especially yung mga recent ones, should be included in your introduction. And errors, mistakes, or objectives are not clearly stated. excuse me, and inclusion of data or conclusions being reported. So the introduction is not the place for you to write your data or your results or your conclusions. You should save that part for the results and discussion. Okay, these are my references. Thank you very much.